his mind, I'm all for trying. But I think one of the tools that's at our disposal to do that is to persuade Congressman Lujan to persuade the president to change his mind. And if Congressman Lujan was willing to put out a statement saying these people should be investigated, the investigation should be of the crime, not of hand-picked people, and it should go where it leads, he needs to put out such a statement again. And asking the president is not enough. Congress can actually assert its power and become something that the president is scared of. And the way you do that, Congressman Lujan, is to introduce on Monday articles of impeachment for Judge Jay Bybee. Because you're not the chairman of a committee, you don't start a subpoena, but you are a member of the House of Representatives. You have an absolute obligation to use the most frequently mentioned tool in the Constitution, the tool most detailed in description in the Constitution, the tool that our founders thought our representatives would need to use frequently to check the executive and judicial branches, the tool of impeachment. And if you cannot impeach Jay Bybee, who every human rights organization across the political spectrum and even the corporate media and the New York Times have said, for God's sakes, impeach him. If you can't impeach him, if Congressman Lujan wants to become a hero nationally, if he wants to have more money than Alan Grayson can dream of, all he has to do on Monday is introduce articles of impeachment against Jay Bybee. Because then Congress becomes something that the president has to listen to, right? Just as the progressives might become something that the president has to listen to by standing for something on health care. If Congress again has the power to actually punish someone from the executive branch or recently thereof, then they have the power to subpoena people. Then they say to Eric Holder, you prosecute these people or we're going to drag them in to Congress and force them to testify about their crimes. And I hate to tell you who they're going to point the fingers at. It's going to go all the way back to you and Billy Clinton, unless you start doing your job. But Congress has no power, has no teeth, is not feared by its own executive. If Congressman Lujan introduces articles of impeachment against Jay Bybee, he becomes an international hero. He brings in twice the money of Alan Grayson that Alan Grayson got last week, immediately. He's written up in all the major newspapers and invited on all the talk shows, and we get our government back.
But you know the problem with that,
Yeah, 10 according to him.
the problem with that is that I'm trying to look at the other side. The problems that the president faces are so many, so massive. Don't distract him with this kind of tactics.
I didn't ask the president to do a goddamn thing. I asked Congress to impeach Jay Bybee.
Where is Biden? Where is he, sir?
He has a lifetime appointment on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is in California, Oregon, Nevada. He's based mostly in Las Vegas. He's often sitting in the court in San Francisco, in other cities where the Ninth Circuit Court is on the West Coast. And he potentially is going to rule on crimes of Bush and Cheney, including warrantless spying and so forth. This is a man who came in and made a deal and said, I will sign secret memos legalizing blatant crimes if you'll nominate me to a lifetime appointment on the Ninth Circuit. And they did, and there he is. And Congress isn't doing anything about it. Now, there are movements to get lawyers like him disbarred. You go to disbartorturelawyers.com.org and help with that. There are movements to, in his case, to get the Ninth Circuit to take action against him. There are movements with other lawyers and with psychiatrists and other professionals who've been involved with the torture to get them stripped of their licenses. All very good approaches. There's a new student movement started yesterday at Berkeley to go after the torture lawyers. Of course, John Yoo, who worked for Jay Bybee, is at Berkeley as an honored professor teaching us how we should conduct ourselves. But, you know, if he can't be impeached, you know, then impeachment is only for Democrats, it's only for sex, and it's not for members of executive branches, it's not for Republicans, it's not for conservatives, and it's not for anything other than sex, right? And the Constitution says that the president, vice president, and every civil officer of the United States shall be removed from office upon conviction, impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, as long as there's sex involved. No, it doesn't have that bit in there, right? It's just treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, which means abuses of high office. Yes?
What circuit are we in? And is there anybody in our own circuit that we should go after? We're in the 10th?
Good question. Anybody know?
10th.
Well, what was the other one?
And is there anybody in our circuit that we should be going after, rather
I
than?
don't know, but if you
And
go
does it
to...
matter? Does that weaken? I mean, I'm trying to frame a
If
way
you-
to sell this to Lujan, to go after a judge in a different circuit.
Well, it's not the point of what circuit he's in, it's the point of what he did in order to get there. I mean,
Right.
I mean, it doesn't, yeah.
Well,
He's one step away from the Supreme Court.
If you want to take a trip to California and join the people who go into his courthouse and protest him, great. But if you could get a congressman from New Mexico or anywhere else to propose impeaching him, right? And you don't even have to introduce articles of impeachment. You could just introduce a resolution that says the House Judiciary Committee should open an investigation into whether Jay Bybee has committed impeachable offenses. It's one sentence. This is how we sent Alberto Gonzalez home. There was a resolution introduced in the spring of 2007, I think it was, that said just that about Alberto Gonzalez. And dozens of Congress members signed on, and over the summer, dozens more committed to sign on. They couldn't formally get their names on there until Congress came back from summer break. But by that time, he left. Right? Almost every impeachment effort, and there have been many dozens through the course of U.S. history, have succeeded short of actually getting to impeachment. They've succeeded first, as with Alberto Gonzalez. So he doesn't have to know anything about it. He doesn't have to jump ahead of anybody. He doesn't have to write up the articles of impeachment, though we'd be glad to do it for him. Just a one-sentence resolution. That's it.
And say that one sentence again.
Isn't anybody working on Barbara Lee or anybody out in California?
Yeah, is anybody doing this?
I mean, why-
There's a problem with Congresswoman Barbara Lee in that she is probably far and away the second best member of Congress we've got after Congressman Kucinich. But she defers to John Conyers on anything related to the Judiciary Committee. We had a meeting years ago about impeaching Dick Cheney, and Congresswoman Waters was the one really pushing, let's impeach Dick Cheney first, because with Bush you get the Cheney excuse and so on. And it was really Congresswoman Lee who said, it's not our place, let's ask John Conyers if it's appropriate. Of course, John Conyers said no, and that was that. And so there are relationships within the Congress and barriers within the Congress.
Or somebody else in California.
I'm for asking all of them immediately, but you guys live here.
No, but nobody's approached any of them.
Oh, I approach all of them all the time. I urge everyone to approach them all the time. I'm going to Florida the day after tomorrow to tell everybody to ask Wexler and Grayson and everyone in Florida the same thing we've been talking about. We have 5 minutes. I wonder if anyone would raise their hand that they would be interested in taking a leading role or working with the groups that already do it, since you've already got organization here and have been doing similar things, in approaching Congressman Lujan in some way that you decide on some of these issues.
I'm from LA, I'll talk to Becerra.
All right, we got 6, yes, please do. We got 7 leaders. So would anyone want to pass around a notebook if people sign up, or what would, do you all everybody already know everybody, or?
No, no.
Okay, here's a piece of paper starting in the front left over here that's going to come around. So please put down your your name and contact info,